Right, members, welcome to this meeting of the Redesign Board. This meeting will, of course, be recorded and uploaded to the Council's YouTube channel. So any of you who have terminal insomnia are more than at liberty to watch it. Apologies for absence. I only have one, who is Michael Green.
Margaret Patterson.
Margaret Patterson. Okay. Are there any declarations of interest? Nope. The minutes of the board meeting were approved by the council on the 14th of December, so they're really only here for noting. That's item 3. Item 4 is the redesign of Highland Council work programme update. John.
Thanks, Kavina. Just give a brief introduction. So this report, members, as usual, is the overview of progress of the core redesign projects. So I'll just go through some highlights and just note that we have a number of officers here who can take questions on specific projects as required. So going through firstly the roads project, section 7 of the report. So it was the workshop that was held this week, which I understand there was a good attendance at. Second workshop looking at capital expenditure is scheduled for the 17th of April. Noting also that updates relating to reviews of roads policies will be taken to the May EMI committee. So I think we have Tracy here if any questions on that. Section 8 covers the in-house bus operations, noting there that an additional coach has been purchased, and there's been engagement with other bodies, particularly the Association of Transport Coordinating Officers Scotland, Transport Scotland, Scottish Borders Council. I think quite a lot of interest in the operations that are happening here. Recognise that also after a year of operations, there have been some significant cost avoidance compared to the commercial route. Implementation of transport management software, work is continuing with a preferred supplier there, but noting that there is a risk around resources, specifically in terms of recruiting a project manager. David Summers here who can answer any questions on that. Section 9 covers my council programme. There's been quite a bit of activity in this programme over recent weeks. So the customer contact strategy has been agreed. A timetable has been set out to the board for implementation of that, and that I think is due to come back to members at a future redesign board and then council in September. Project 3 of the My Council programme, which is looking at housing repairs. This is looking at the end-to-end customer journey. So there was a review of the process. A number of findings from that process have been implemented, and already this seems to be having a positive impact. There's still more to do, but initial results from that are promising. Project 4, which is looking at customer contact methods. A lot of focus at the moment is on the review of the website. So we now have an agreed approach for how the review of the website is going to be undertaken. We have a team in place, and work is started to prepare for what will be a full redesign of the council's website. Rollout of new telephony is now continuing in schools, and overall all the projects in my council programme are on track. Moving on to the trades framework, section 10 of the report. Project at an early stage, activity has concentrated on understanding lessons from previous iterations and building up the evidence to support the new approach. So I should have said Alison is and Kate are here for my council. If there's any questions there, Trends framework, we have Mark online. And then finally, the employability review, just noting that final draft report has been produced by consultants and is currently under review. Apologies for Andy McCann, who couldn't make the meeting today, but we can take any questions for Andy. Maybe.
Any questions? Trish?
Is the bus electric?
No.
Diesel again?
Yes. Chris?
Just wondering what is happening about appointing a project manager for this TAS project, and what sort of timescales you expect that to happen. Noticing that all the items which are being delayed and are at significant risk of the environmental side of the operation.
Chris, the only problem is, can you sit there because people online can't hear you?
I was questioning about the failure to recruit anyone to the project management post at the TAS system, and just wondering what the timescales are likely to be and what plans there are to get somebody in post.
Lucy?
Hi.
You're either going to have to shout or you're going to have to come forward.
Okay. Yeah, just to provide you with assurance that our project manager has only recently departed, and unfortunately there is a time lag in the recruitment. Because the post is currently only scheduled to last for another 3 months, that has been obviously quite unattractive for some applicants. So we will be bringing a report back to see if we can get that post extended so that we've got more or better prospects for recruitment. Okay.
Thanks.
Any further questions? You'll note that there is a minor duplication in 4.2. 4.2 is in twice, so don't get too het up about it. So, okay, can we do that then, please? Great, thank you. Item 5 is asset rationalisation. Mark or Finlay? Mark, you're on mute.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
I'll just do a very brief introduction, and then Finlay and I are available to take any questions members have. So the purpose of the report today is just to give you updates on the asset rationalisation work streams that we've reported to previous redesign boards, and it does link into recent papers to Council in December 2023 and March 2024, which amongst other things talked about a changed approach to asset rationalisation, what was proposed to be in scope. And so I'm not going to go over that detail again, but there are clear linkages between those two reports and also the work that Redesign's been doing today on this particular area. Within section 4 of the report today, there are updates on what we are doing in relation to headquarters and in Inverness generally. And then in section 5, we talk about updates on other key current work streams that are going on, including activities in Skye and Dingwall and proposals in respect of Fort William and Wick. And then at section 6 of the report in front of you, this is where we're starting to tie back what's happening here within redesign and what has happened to what we've been outlining in respect of asset rationalisation and capital investment programmes in the December and March reports. Other than that general introduction, that's all I want to say at this point in time. As I said, I'm quite happy for Finlay and I to take any questions.
Any questions?
Just one for information. Which one is headquarters block A?
Oh, that's probably something. Finlay, that's maybe something to explain to people who haven't been here for years.
Block A is the block closest to Ross Street, the square block with white marling on it.
Oh, right, yes.
There's 2 blocks, A and B. Right. That's the one basically north.
That's right, still. So we're quite safe here for a couple of hours yet. That's all right.
Not entirely convinced you'll be safe in block A.
No. Thank you.
Alison.
Yeah, thank you. Would it be possible to get an analysis in terms of the townhouse saving? Because when that was originally put up to the redesign board, it was on the basis that all staff that were in the townhouse were going to come into the HQ. And I understand that most of the housing staff are scattered across various buildings across the city. So therefore the saving, probably isn't in line with what the board was originally told. It'd be useful to get a comparison as to what was the saving approved at the time when we agreed the townhouse relocation to what it is now, and also if I could be told where we're at with dilapidations in terms of the townhouse, that'd be useful.
It'd also be interesting to know how many staff remain in the townhouse, because there are staff, I believe, similar number of staff are still in the townhouse when we no longer occupy the townhouse as a building. So we have amenity staff, etc., etc. So it may be interesting to find that out too.
So in relation to on the DLAPS point, I'll defer to Finlay in a second. On Alistair's point, it's a fair question. I'm happy to go away and pull those figures together, working in conjunction with the team, and we'll put them back. Similarly, Bill, in respect of current occupancy of that building, and indeed who's doing that, although that is principally now a matter for our colleagues in the Common Good, who I know have been exploring opportunities to let space within it. But we'll pull all that together and provide a further update on those points to the next redesign board, or indeed we can circulate them in advance if that's preferred.
I think I was more meaning, Mark, the staff that we pay for.
Okay, no, that's fine. We'll pick that up as part of that as well then, and we'll circulate that to yourself in the first instance.
Chair, thanks. Just to say, the service point still operates from the townhouse, so clearly there's council staff still in the building, and there's also FM staff that work for Common Goods, so they're located in the building as well. Maintaining the asset.
If they're Common Good staff, I'm not interested. I don't want to know. That's a different matter altogether.
There may just be some confusion. People seeing the same people in and out of the building. They're not employed by or paid for general family.
And the dilapidations?
Dilapidations, ongoing discussions with our estates colleagues, Chair, in regards to DLAPs.
Any other questions? Okay, you're asked to note the report. Item 6 on our agenda. I believe there's a certain Deputy Chief Executive who wishes to say a few words to us.
Good afternoon, everybody. I've got a very short presentation for you, which really just highlights bits from the redesign board that are sitting within the delivery plan. And it just gives the members of the redesign board an opportunity to, as I say, see where they're located and maybe provide some input into their development. So I'm hoping that this will come up on.
You have faith.
The system. Do you? Possibly not me. Might be easier if I join the meeting and share my presentation, so bear with me a second.
Try to fix it.
I've got the right person sitting to my right, certainly. Okay. Okay, so the intention here, as I say, is just to highlight where in the delivery plan the current redesign projects sit. So as you know, there are 6 portfolios sitting within the delivery plan, but of those, only 3 actually contain the redesign projects. So in Workforce of the Future, we have the employability review. Reconfiguring our asset base, we have asset rationalisation and trades framework. And corporate solutions, we have My Council programme, bus solutions, and actually, sorry, that's in the wrong area. That's in previous slide. Bus operations is in reconfiguring our asset base, as is the roads redesign. Which is, I seem to have the wrong version here. So the ones that you saw in your update report, this is where they're sitting across those 3 portfolios. And then I'm going to go onto the top side of those portfolios so you can see, and it would be really useful at this point to have some discussion around about where they're sitting and if you feel they're in the right place. I'll also just take you through the current process and just highlight where you'll have further opportunity to engage on the delivery plan. So far, the project plan, delivery plan was approved in draft on the 14th of March. From the 16th of March onwards, there's been a range of staff and partner engagement sessions, and we've been developing the milestones and performance indicators specifically as a consequence of feedback from the council discussion. The staff engagement has been in the form so far of a couple of engagements with the Chief Executive, online staff engagement forums, but there's also in terms of our management teams going out and engaging with our staff as we deliver these programmes further. Partner engagement is varying across each of the portfolios. In the Workforce for the Future portfolio, as an example, we're engaging with Chambers of Commerce, with Skills Development Scotland, and as the weeks progress, we'll be engaging with different industry sectors as well. And the development of milestones and PIs is in particular reference to the discussion that was had at Council regarding the need to have much clearer sense of the how, what, when and where we're going to be delivering against the delivery plan objectives. On the 22nd of April, if the email hasn't come out to you yet, it will be coming out this afternoon. There'll be an all-member seminar on the afternoon, that's a Monday afternoon, where we'll be looking in detail at all of the portfolios and the work streams and projects in those portfolios. It will be an in-person session. We'll be looking at how we can also support some online engagement as well for those who aren't able to engage in person. And then from that point on, there'll be the further refinement of the plan until we get to the 9th of May, where that final plan will come to Council for approval. So that's the process to date. Now, I don't want to suggest that 9th of May is the end of the process, it's actually the beginning, because at that point, we will then be taking various projects and work streams to the relevant strategic committees and the redesign board as those projects progress. So, as I say, in terms of where we are with the portfolios, there are 3 key portfolios that are relevant to the redesign board. And if I start with the Workforce for the Future portfolio, this has taken on quite a bit of development since you saw it at committee, at council, beg your pardon, as we're trying to get clearer in terms of what our work streams are and how those interrelate. There's good engagement that's going on internally between our education service and our employability service and our economic development team, and how we do this, and as I've already said, really good engagement with partners and with sector representatives, and that's ongoing, and that will continue up to council and beyond. In terms of where the employability review takes place, it actually takes place across a range of these, because what we're finding in terms of employability is there is a very complex landscape, and there are lots of handoffs between different schemes and approaches. And there's definitely a sense that we can make a better approach if we're more consistent across the piece. There's some excellent work going on that we don't want to lose, and actually some excellent examples that we want to build upon. But this is about making sure that we understand where we go with schools, post-schools, and how as part of that we make sure that the inequalities element of how people engage in employment and positive destinations impacts on their ability to do so. So what we'll need to do is come back to the redesign board with a clear project plan in terms of how those employability services are going to operate. And I'd like to suggest that the next redesign board has something that's quite detailed around about how we're intending to do that. But you will see it is complex at the moment, and pathways and partnerships are probably where that employability element sits most strongly. But there are important connections that are made right across this, and important connections that are made outside of school and with our key employers in the Highlands. Another critical part of this is also about how we not just develop the workforce, but also create new job opportunities and push those job opportunities out into all parts of Highland. So those sectors are really important, because those sectors can operate right across the Highland area, but there will be certain parts of Highland where they have greatest impact. And again, it's about understanding how we make the most of those and how we support those to grow. So it is quite a complicated slide at the moment. We're trying to refine it and make it simpler. And then sitting behind that will be the individual projects that have the same templates that you've seen already in terms of milestones, key objectives, where they fit in terms of our corporate plan and our programme, and how we'll deliver them across the 3-year period. What I can do, if you like, is I'll go on to the other slides, and then I can come back to that if people wish, or I can take questions now.
Just carry on.
Okay. So if you go to the next one on reconfiguring our asset base, this is again being developed since you saw it at council. It looks a lot closer to what you saw at council, but it's still under development following the input that we had from yourselves, but also will continue to develop between now and when you see it on the 22nd. You will see here we've got trades framework up in the top right. And then we've also got the roads and transport improvement programme, bottom left. And also at the bottom right, we've got the bus operations. And that's because whilst it's titled reconfiguring our asset base, we don't want to be too constrictive in terms of what assets mean. I think we're very clear that there's a rationalisation programme that sits within redesign, but roads are assets and buses increasingly are assets too. So it seemed appropriate that they would sit within the same portfolio because also obviously it's critical that the impact on our capital programme more generally is understood. So that's where those projects sit within the reconfiguring our asset base. And then lastly, but certainly not least, we've got the corporate solutions portfolio. And here you will see we've got the My Council project sitting there on the right. And that, if you saw in your update report, there's a well-defined project and programme already, which is making extremely good progress as it is. Because you get that here already and it's well progressed, I'm not sure that we need to spend an awful lot of time on that, but very happy to kind of take further comments and questions around about it. So that, as I say, is just a very quick overview of where the redesign priorities sit within the delivery plan, just to give you assurance that it is being taken forward as part of the wider delivery plan, and where synergies and connections can be made with other projects, we will be able to do those, and also bring that back to the redesign board, where you feel there's relevance and where you might want a little bit of extra insight in terms of the work that's going on. So if I go back to the first portfolio then that's being looked at, the workforce for the future and employability, very happy to take any questions.
Any questions? No.
Okay. And you're happy with bringing this up to the next redesign?
Yes, most definitely.
Okay, so the reconfiguring our asset base, as I say, there are 4 projects under reconfiguring the asset base: asset rationalisation, trades framework, bus operations, and roads redesign.
Any questions? Trish?
Was the refurbishment make sure that we're taking the buildings to make them greener?
Absolutely, and you will be aware that the final portfolio in the delivery plan is about net zero and renewables, and the first work stream in that portfolio is all about the delivery of the net zero strategy. And there will be climate change and energy team members sitting across the delivery plan to understand what the multiple impacts can be, positive and negative, around that net zero and delivering our net zero targets. The reconfiguring our asset base is probably the most critical one of the portfolios that we need to have that read across, and we've had all sorts of conversations about where things actually more appropriately sit. But what we will be doing in terms of reconfiguring our asset base and also the climate change and energy and net zero targets that are related to our property is those will be reported to the Housing and Property Committee to ensure that there's a strategic committee oversight, as well as making sure they continue to be reflected in the Climate Change Committee as well. But we do think that where it impacts on our assets, it's important that the strategic committee has that ability to kind of feed into that too, not least because obviously they have control and responsibility around about budget and budget allocation.
David?
In all of these, just generically, it might be, or if it was at all possible, for when, coming back to redesign, if there's some sort of ability to be able to determine or advise or consider timelines, yes. Because a lot of what we look at, both at council redesign and what have you, has the project detail and the determination that we're going towards and what have you, but we rarely have ourselves give ourselves targets in terms of timelines, whether they're realistic or not, but at least if we can give ourselves the timeline,
Sure, we can do
whether
that.
that's Gantt for me, or just even indeed just the best detail.
So the milestones are really critical.
Milestones.
And yeah,
Somebody would come up with the right word.
but I think that was picked up at council as well, that actually the milestones weren't where they needed to be across a whole range of the projects. Some were more defined and more developed than others, but the milestones are really important. And what we're wanting to be able to present is a kind of dashboard where you can get a health check very quickly in terms of where we are with the milestones that are approved. So I agree entirely. It's important that we have that. We'll have short, medium and long-term targets as well. And I think it's important we understand that some milestones will be quite far into the future, but we need to know what the jump-off points are between those and how we get from where we are to those longer-term milestones as well.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, so then if we go to the corporate solutions portfolio. So as I say, the main one here is the My Council programme, which, as I say, you get an update on already. It's progressing well, and we've actually moved quite a number of our work streams from amber to green recently, which was really reassuring. So I think that's already, as I say, a well-developed and mature programme.
Any questions? Awesome.
Just anecdotally on that, I had an elector who said there was trouble getting through to the council on the telephone this week.
Okay,
So I made the call as well, 45 minutes.
is that the call centre itself?
I don't know, it's a 013498666 number, but when we did get through, the person couldn't help anyway.
Right.
So it was, best part of 50 minutes. And I knew the answer, but I wanted to see, because this member of the public was saying, so I don't know if in our next report we could actually get some stats on how many calls are abandoned.
Yeah.
So I think it's the abandoned calls we need to home in on, not the ones we're answering, because they're getting a service, it's the ones that we're not answering.
Many organisations have an option whereby you can press
Call
X
back.
to call back.
Yeah, we don't.
So we definitely have all those stats in terms of calls answered, calls abandoned, length of wait. So we do have that information. It is one of the areas that's being looked at as part of the My Council programmes, a really, really essential element of that. One of the reasons we're looking to try and be better digitally, and that's not to exclude those who don't want to engage digitally, but by being better digitally, we take people away from the call lines and push them into different channels. But we absolutely know that we need to do that. My understanding was that the performance had improved, and it was a lot less than that. So that's a concern, and we will certainly look at that.
Oh,
Yeah, I mean, we recently moved to a new phone system, and by all accounts, the change has been managed very well. Members can say in terms of last week, the call average wait time was just over 2 minutes, 2 minutes and 12 seconds, compared to the local government average, which is generally 4.5 minutes. The abandonment rate was about 12%. We think some other councils and other bodies are well above 12%. That does not mean that there's not other calls that maybe fall into that category, Alistair. What we can do is with that telephone number, if you wish, if you give me that number, we can find out when the call was made, the content of the conversation, how it was handled. That's all part of the learning experience. But what I would not wish members to think is that the example that Councillor Christie said there is typical. It's not. I sometimes myself to find out, just speak to the phone caller, and generally I get through within a couple of minutes. So the performance has been very, very good and continues to be. What I would say is maybe about 18 months ago, we didn't have our problems to seek, but through work, through Alison and the team, we've made great strides and have continued to do so. But if there's further information I can take back to this design board or indeed committee, Alison, I'm happy to do that just to provide greater reassurance.
I can give you the time of the call.
Absolutely. Thank you.
I'll be honest, I had an inquiry about a particular call earlier in the week, and I was very impressed that we could actually get the full details of what the conversation was. And actually, the conversation was much different than the person who phoned me told me. So it was very impressive. So we should be able to do that.
Okay.
Michael.
Thank you, Chair. Did we not move to putting in a system whereby the number in the queue? Like you could be, if you phone in and it says you're 10 in the queue, so you can decide, okay, I'm going to wait a few minutes, or I'm going to just drop out and redial.
We do that. There's various offers. what you can do is say the average call time, because obviously when somebody phones in, there's different call routines depending on the type of query. It's not just the general number we go through. If they say you're pressed for to go through to certain call handling group, that group itself think that level and say your call will be answered within 2 minutes, 3 minutes, kind of thing in terms of call to call handling. Now, I mean, one could argue even having to wait 2.5 minutes is excessive. I would say in the call handling industry these days, it's not. When you're, others, I think we set our own benchmarks, and I think if we are 2.5 minutes, and that's nearly double as good as most local authorities, if not more, across Scotland and UK. I think we're doing quite well. As I say, that's not to say there's not exceptions that we can't do better on.
It's not a lot better than HMRC, I can assure you. That's my first.
Thank you, convener. Yeah, it was just to get an answer to your question when you asked that about the callback. I know we've raised it before in Redesign Board. Is that an option for us, Alan Gunn, for us to have that callback? I mean, Michael Baird asked part of the question I was going to ask as well. That would be helpful to say you're, number 10 in the queue and the waiting time is 18 minutes. Do you wish to hold on and get a call back? That'd be really helpful. Or is that change our call centre, because we're an inbound call centre, and does that change our call centre to becoming a contact centre?
So, Councillor McPherson, yeah, we have quite a lot of functionality. We haven't turned on all aspects of it. I think we need to bring things in bit by bit and see how it fits with our operations. I'm pretty sure we have that callback facility is an option there. Also, the other aspects that we're looking at are things like a chat facility, so going through the same mechanism so that you could actually do a chat online rather than a voice call. So there's absolutely a number of options that we can look at there. I think it's less about the technology and more about actually how it fits with our processes, and I think that's where the wider work within the My Council programme is really focusing.
Thanks, John. Any other questions, members? Okay, you're asked to note the presentation. Item number 7 is the amenities project update. Cameron? Yeah, it would be, because they won't give you a lot.
Thanks, members, for the opportunity to come back and update you with the progress since we presented a closure report earlier in the year. So the paper updates members on the work that's been ongoing since project closure and the 6 objectives that were set out in the review, and they're all updated and set forward of the report for you. If I can just pick up on a few of the deliverables, some of the themes that we've got in there. The Play Park strategy was approved by our committee in November 2023. It's a very comprehensive document, a major really on the community engagement that we carried out and across a very large age spectrum. We carried out quite a considerable literature review, and a lot of work went into making connections between local, national and international guidance. And the document has really fully integrated the approach between all the different strategies and policies that are out there. And one that has since garnered quite a lot of interest from other local authorities and other bodies across Scotland and beyond, particularly around about the literature review that our officer undertook. So we're quite proud of that. And it's given us a really good framework now for moving forward with our play parks. Biodiversity is a priority for the team, and working very closely now with colleagues across the council has resulted in much better working relationships and collaborative approach, developing things like the proposed integrated bee control strategy that's really moving on now. So really pleased with that. We're also going to be setting up a small officer working group with colleagues in IE and particularly in Paul Wallace's team to really get on board with what else we could do with roundabout, with rewilding areas, and what other environmental or what changes we make to the way that we manage environment to really create better conditions for our flora and fauna. And I know Councillor Bremner that John Mackay had a good session with you the other week about maybe looking at piloting some of this up with you. So I'll get more of the feedback from John when he gets back from his holidays, and we certainly look forward to developing that.
To be clear, it wasn't just with me, it was with
Yeah,
all the
with
case
others,
inspectors, it was all the
yes.
case members and
Yeah.
Highland was
Yeah.
there and Rangers and Market.
Yeah, some good partnership opportunities up there, I think, to develop that further. So looking at benefits for wildlife by identifying areas that can be managed or set aside with signage indicating areas that have been left for environmental benefits, and that's contributed towards reducing carbon emissions. We've increased our set aside areas from 92,247 square metres in 2002 up to 150,194 square metres in 2023. So we're really trying to move on at pace with creating these areas. So we hosted our pesticide policy compliance and enforcement workshop, and that's led to the development of the weed control working group, and that's a cross-service working group with the representatives from amenities, roads, education, waste, housing and health and safety and environmental development, and focusing on that creation of the integrated weed strategy that's quite long overdue to be developed. So we're really pleased with that piece of work as well. The provision of a one-off capital allocation of £500,000 is really going to deliver significant benefits over the coming years. So that's about buying equipment that allows us to manage land for environmental benefit more effectively. It's also about buying battery operated equipment, less emissions, it's quieter to use. We can use it around about school areas without disturbing the classrooms too much. And it's less vibration, so that means that our operatives are not exposed in the same way to hand-arm vibration issues that we sometimes do get elsewhere. Also looking at expanding the robo-mower fleet, and that allows us to access slopes that we can't generally maintain, that we're not allowed to maintain because of the gradient there, but also they allow us to do annual cuts, and again that contributes towards different types of management in these areas. And Fort William we've seen a really good example in Fort William where we've had environmental benefits as well as benefits to the aesthetics of the housing scheme, where people are now not dropping litter and picking up their dog mess and things like that because we've been able to maintain an area and not leave it knee-high with weeds and grass. And it really does make a difference. We don't just cut grass for amenities, we create an environment for people. And finally, we've just signed the tender document for the grounds maintenance contract. That's a new 5-year contract that will come into place in spring 2025. And please, that's coming in on budget and with an affordability level. So happy to take any questions. I've got Debbie, who's our amenities expert, with me. So we'll take any questions that members may have.
So we're changing to battery-powered equipment. I presume we're taking into consideration the dangers of battery charging.
Yes.
If they're left on charging.
Yeah.
For example, the easy thing to do is just stick it on charge overnight. That we shouldn't be doing.
No, we've bought proper charging unit, proper charging cases that will be properly installed in an environment that has been risk assessed. So we're not just going to unplug the kettle and plug in the streamer. It will all be done in a controlled, risk assessed, trained fashion.
Okay, and this is an aside, it's probably not maybe something you can answer, but we've got a full complement of species champions these days. Because we have species champions.
Yes. I don't know.
And if not, then we should maybe go back out to them and encouraging members to become species champions.
I can pick that with Nicole and come back and see where we are with that.
Yeah, I'm just interested in the weed control because we looked at this a few years ago when there was a motion about glyphosate. And I'm interested to see that you've got a pesticide policy compliance and enforcement workshop that talked about weed control. Well, pesticides doesn't do anything for the weeds. It's for the actual animals that are in it. So where are we with that? Are you doing the two at the same time? Or are you just looking at pesticides now? And what's happening with weed control? Have we got a solution to the replacement with glyphosate?
No, I'm going to let Debbie speak to that because she's actually on or leading the charge with that.
Sorry, thanks. Yeah, so at the moment there is still no viable, cost-effective alternative for glyphosate, but we are looking at reducing glyphosate levels across the area. So we're looking at using a new system called No-Mix Dual, which is a total droplet control based system which works through a lance. So it's much more controlled application, and it's actually more effective than glyphosate on its own, and it doesn't require any mixing, so it's less manual handling for the staff and things like that. We aren't obviously using it in the areas where the motion has the ban, but what we will be doing is trialling more alternatives. We've got, there's still more alternatives on the market that we haven't looked at, and we're liaising with other council APSI for different weed control methods. But essentially we have developed a decision matrix now, which takes you through 5 different options, or the outcomes are 5 different ones. So you follow just the various questions of where you want to do it, what the effect will be, and then that will tell you whether or not weed control is required and by what means, so whether it's chemical or manual removal or something else, or just leave it, because not all weeds do need to be removed. So we're just in the process. The working group that's been developed meets roughly every 8 weeks. So we're just in the process of developing the final version of the decision matrix. And then at that stage, we will be looking to draft up the weed control policy, which will have an integrated weed control management plan as part of that, which will look at a variety of different methods. And the pesticide enforcement is more about the HSE, who now have pesticide enforcement officers who can show up at any point to any one of our depots or out on site and speak to our operatives about what they're doing with regards to weed control, evidencing that they've been properly trained, they have proper equipment, we are disposing of any unused chemicals responsibly. They have a variety of different things that they can check with us, so we want to be ahead of the game and make sure we've got all our ducks in a row with regards to the appropriate staff, the appropriate training and all the records. Because as we know from previous visits we've had with regards to halves, for example, they ask for all the evidence and we need to make sure we've got that across the board, and not just in amenities, because we're not the only department who does, which is why we have representatives from across the services to make sure everyone's gathering up the same information and collecting it all. And we hope to, when the new website comes out, have a section on there as well, which will direct members of the public and all the people who like to put in FOIs about weed control, which will show where we've been doing it, how much we've been doing and what kind of weed control. So we've got all of that recorded in a public facing way, because that's much easier for us, and hopefully it will be much more transparent. Yes.
But that's herbicides, not pesticides.
Yes. So
what pesticides are you using?
Well, it's a mixture, so it depends on where we're doing it and what we're doing, whether we use pesticides or herbicides or.
Well, yeah, because you're treating a different thing.
Yes. And certain things, for example, invasive species require different treatment. And if we're doing around the edges of fence lines or trees to reduce our strimming, then there's different methods that are required. So that's part of the whole integrated approach. There's not sort of a one size fits all for it. And lots of local authorities are trying to work together on taking different options forward. And we've spoken at various different events with different colleagues about how we can try and improve things and make everything more transparent and more have more examples of what works and what doesn't, because what works in some areas doesn't work in others, and what works for some species works for some not.
So what pests are you using? You're killing? Who's the pesticide?
What are we killing?
Yeah.
I couldn't give you a whole thing.
That's what I was asking, because
Okay.
they're 2 separate things.
Yeah.
So I'd like some more information off the table on pesticides, please.
Yeah.
My question was very similar to Trish's one, actually, and I was also going to ask, is there a target date that you've got to get a viable alternative? And I'm species champion for the toad, by the way.
Next job.
Behave yourself.
We don't have a target date for an alternative to glyphosate, because at the current time, the extension in the UK is until 2025, but we expect that to fall in line with the European Union extension, which has been granted for another 10 years from December last year. So we expect that will be extended in line with the same requirements. So we wouldn't be looking at a blanket alternative to glyphosate, which is why we're looking at the reduced methods. At the moment, unfortunately, there doesn't seem to be one, but although I'm sure there are lots of companies who are frantically trying to develop something that will work as effectively and be as cost effective as glyphosate. But at the moment, we're just looking to reduce the levels as far as possible. And we do have a plan to try and get the weed control strategy done this year. That's what we're aiming to get done. But it does take a bit of time to gather all the information to develop it into the strategy.
Just for interest, means that mountain hare and the pine hoverfly.
Minky quail.
I got two. That's my first.
Thank you, convener. Yeah, it was just when Caroline Campbell said that we've put a contract out for the next 2 years. Does that mean we're outsourcing all our grass cutting, or is it garden services, or what is it we've signed a contract with for the next 2 years? And a question for Debbie. Thanks for your explanation, Debbie, about the weed killers. I think that will be helpful, that we can direct constituents to that so they can see what's been put out and where, what areas have been covered. So that will really be good, and it'll cut down the number of inquiries that we get as members as well. My question for Debbie was the play parks. You know how we had to do the bark in them because they were classed as unsafe? What stage are we at with that? How good is that going to remain for the next coming couple of years, or what's our programme to reintroduce fresh bark in case there's another health and safety issue where we had to close play parks? So these were my two questions. Who's got the contract, and are we outsourcing everything, and the bark on the play parks? Thank you.
Okay. The contract, Councillor McPherson's for 5 years. It's a 5-year contract, and that's for the provision of grounds maintenance machinery. We have got the staff supplemented by seasonal staff, and this is for the provision of the machinery that we use.
It's actually in the report, and it details that it is actually machinery.
Yeah. With the exception of Lochaber, or elements of Lochaber that is fully contracted out because we just can't.
They're special.
They're very special. So yeah, 5 years and machinery only.
Chris?
Thanks. I wanted to come in on the weed killer issue. I noticed that tree planting is in a separate paragraph heading to weed killer, and I just wonder whether there's any consideration being given to areas where you could address killing weeds by shrubs and bushes and planting of trees.
Yeah, that's very much part of what we're trying to do, and we're going to just increase that collaborative working with Nicole and her team. And we're working closely with one of the ecology officers. Is that Katie's job title?
Yeah.
It's about changing how you manage areas. So, planting trees, planting shrubs. What else can we do to allow areas to be managed differently, so you're not having to intervene so often, and not use weed control or anything, and just use natural control.
I had another couple of questions as well. The grass cuttings that you're now uplifting, I'm just wondering, are they going with our general waste to Aberdeen or wherever, or would they be of use to any local food growing groups? Because grass clippings are a great accelerated compost heaps, and local groups might well be able to use them rather than having to pay for disposal in Aberdeen. And my third question was looking at bringing SLAs for common good funds. Do you anticipate that will mean more money from common good funds coming into the council coffers? Just because you haven't got common good fund, we do. One money.
I'll pick up the common good of me first, and Debbie will pick up the grass clippings. Yeah, we would be seeking to have that SLA review with common good areas in the way that we've done with housing and education. Once we get that understanding of what it is we're doing, because of course these things just evolve over time, and you kind of lose the story of what we're doing and why and how often and all the rest of it. So I think once we get that baseline of what it is we're doing, square metre wise, how that fits with what the current budget is, then I think we would have a conversation about what the choices are. So it may be that we do less with current budget, or we do the same with enhanced budget. It's too difficult to preempt, but those are the sorts of things that would follow on once we get that baseline established.
Okay.
I can go back about the clippings, and also I'm conscious Councillor McPherson's question about the play parks, so the bark. So on the grass clippings, we're looking at a variety of methods for disposal. So some will be disposed around sites. It's very site dependent about how we will dispose of the clippings that are lifted. And also we are looking at speaking to community groups who may want them for allotments of composting. So there's a variety of different methods.
Great.
We want to try and avoid the costs, if anything, with that. So, and for the play parks and the bark surfacing, so that it should last, the bark surfacing that was put down should last between 3 to 5 years. But what we are trying to do is roll out a replacement programme so that bark is replaced with grass matting where possible, and check what equipment the bark is around to see whether or not safety surfacing is essential. Now we have our play park strategy, which has a benefit risk element to it, which means that not everything requires a safety surface if there's no significant damage or risk from falling from it. So that will be rolled out per site and per ward with various visits to the members to discuss what could be done in the play parks.
Okay. Any further questions, members? Oh, you're invited to note the report. No. Thank you all very much for attendance. It's good to see so many people here today. So thank you.